Thanks for watching. My name's Glen Morgan, and welcome to We the Governed. Now, in Washington state, they just finished a large number of what's called special elections for tax increase proposals last week. But how many of these tax proposals were actually rejected by voters, and why were they rejected? Let's go and take a look. Special elections in February always basically have a dismal voter turnout, and this year was actually no exception. Even small increases in voter turnout during these special elections can really have a big impact on the proposed taxes, which are usually the only issues on the ballot this time of year. Now, from a policy proposal, basically due in part to the poor voter turnout, I've actually recommended for it's about 15 years now that these tax proposals should be on the November ballot every year instead of in February. But that's a topic for another day. In this video, I'm going to focus on the failures more than the tax proposal successes, because while most proposed tax increases or levies are usually approved by local voters during this time, some do indeed fail, and voters clearly reject them. Now, this trend of rejecting tax proposals has been generally increasing in recent years, and I think it's because some property owners and local voters are starting to oppose the tax increases just on principle alone, and because they're feeling under intense financial pressure due to current economic conditions. Even small opposition campaigns can make a big impact on these tax proposals. So let's take a look at some of these tax proposal failures just this last week. Now, regular viewers of this channel will remember kind of a series of videos that we did recently about the North Kitsap School District superintendent who was actually caught stealing campaign signs purchased by local citizens who were opposing the school district expensive multi-million-dollar bond proposal, which would have imposed a 20-year property tax increase on local residents to pay for various new buildings in the school district. Well, no surprise, that bond was soundly defeated by voters in Kitsap County, 63% against versus 36% in support. There were over 10,000 voters who showed up to vote no. Probably many of them were reminded to vote by the public exposure of their local taxpayer-funded superintendent, Lori Lynn Evans. It was actually caught by citizens on game cameras stealing or destroying their vote no campaign signs. This is just a little note now for future supporters of tax increases. It isn't a good look when a paid government employee making $284,000 a year plus benefits is actually caught vandalizing and stealing opposition campaign signs on the way to her weekly morning Rotary meeting. Now, right next door, the Central Kitsap School District Maintenance and Operations Levy, which, unlike a school bond, is actually just a property tax that only lasts for a few years, that was also defeated. Although it was by a much slimmer margin, many local supporters of this school levy, and remember this is next door, it's not the North Kitsap School District, it's the Central Kitsap School District. I've been told, though, many supporters are actually placing the blame for this tax proposal failure on this next door superintendent for drawing all the wrong attention to the Kitsap school systems in general, and they believe that some of their negative results were basically angry voters who were woken up to vote in an otherwise sleepy campaign. Now, just to Kitsap County's north is Jefferson County, where the Quilcene School District soundly rejected their proposed levy tax increase as well, even with a fairly high 44% turnout in voters. Although this is a relatively small school district, so really a very small number of voters is always going to make a very big difference. Looking further afield, it wasn't just sign-stealing superintendents in Kitsap County who basically got their property tax proposals slapped down. In Thurston County, where I live, the Yelm School District, which is to the east, had their levy fail by a narrower margin, 53% opposed and 46% in favor. Now, this was actually a margin of about 450 voters. So, yeah, showing up to vote actually does make a difference. Now, I will point out that the Yelm voters had rejected a school bond proposal in 2016 as well, so it really looks like that school district has some work to do to reconnect with their community or better demonstrate why they should be supported. In my own home school district in southwestern Thurston County, the residents supported the school levy by 60%, so very popular, but they rejected the proposed $89 million bond proposal to build a new high school and spend that property tax cash on other related projects. This is the Rochester School District results here, and you can see that the voter difference, I believe, was local concerns over the not insignificant increases in property taxes, which really would have averaged, based on what I looked at, about $1,200 a year for a few decades per average home. And clearly the school district hasn't convinced enough people in the community that the proposed building project is worth this kind of multi-decade cost, at least not yet. Now remember, because bonds last for a generation on the property tax, they need 60% to pass under Washington State's Constitution. And it looks like about 300 voters in Rochester, which is where I live, who supported the levy for the school district, decided that the bond was just too much money. So a similar scenario I've noticed played out in other districts all around the state, as you're going to see when we look at some of these other examples. Now, you look out on the coast in Pacific County here, voters soundly rejected a hospital district's bond proposal. This was another big bond proposal by 62% opposition. And that was just a sound trouncing for that tax proposal and a clear indication that the local hospital district is out of touch with their voters, who clearly don't trust them to spend that money well or wisely. In eastern King County, which is the Tahoma School District out there, they're currently split, with the main levy apparently failing, with not many ballots left to count, and then their tech levy, which is a very much smaller tax actually, it just barely passing by a handful of votes. It is possible that they might scrounge up a few more hidden ballots, but it seems unlikely. This result that we see right now will actually change. I don't think it's going to change now after the lion's share of the ballots have actually been collected, harvested, and then counted. Now notice that the main levy here was barely failed by less than 64 votes at this point in time. But your vote doesn't count, of course. In Snohomish County, local voters in the Arlington School District, they supported two of their levies. They had two of them, but they rejected the proposed bond for school construction. And this was just like the Rochester School District vote that I described earlier. The Lakewood School District, however, and this is the Lakewood School District up in Snohomish County, the voters rejected both tax proposals on the ballot, which usually means that they have a major failure in that school district's ability to prove to their community that they're actually doing a good job with the taxes that they're already collecting. And then the Sultan School District voters also rejected their school levy by really a sizable margin. Up in Skagit County, which is just to the north of Snohomish, looks like the Mount Vernon School District has an even closer failure in their proposed tech levy tax increase proposal, which is currently failing by just 42 votes. Now, their standard replacement levy is passing by a few hundred votes, but with only a handful of ballots left to count and the trend going opposite direction in the tech levy, this one appears likely to fail. And again, a very small number of people voting, particularly in Skagit County, where only 30% of the people bothered to even cast their ballot. This is just another demonstration that the future does indeed belong to those who show up, and more people showed up to vote no this time. Now, south of Thurston County in neighboring Lewis County, we see the Toledo School District also rejected their school district's proposed bond. Now, getting over to the basically out of the wet side of the state to the dry side, crossing the Cascades, all the way over in Spokane, it appears that all 5 bond proposals by 5 of the school districts were all rejected by local voters. Every single one failed to get to the 60% threshold. And this providing some relief, of course, for property owners. However, the school district levies did pass. So although some were very narrowly approved, one of these bonds rejected was actually from the Deer Park School District, which is really most of it's located in Stevens County to the north. And it also looks like, if you look at Stevens County, that the Colville School District rejected their tech levy proposal quite strongly as well. Now, I noticed that the Moses Lake School District also rejected their proposed levy. Now, regular readers will recognize that this was the same school district where the superintendent was caught stealing money from the school district and was given a nice payday as he was fired from the school district. It is obvious that the voters have some issue with the school district still, and I want to point out that trust can only be restored quite slowly. Now, there are a few others that I really didn't have time to cover in this video. I was more surprised by how close many of the school levies were to failure, just based on the small margin by which they passed. With voter turnout so low, if only a handful of those people who don't want to pay more taxes and who always claim their vote didn't count had actually taken a few minutes and dropped their ballot off anyway, there would likely have been some different outcomes in quite a few of these districts. But political insiders do count on our collective apathy to just ensure passage of tax proposals like these during special election times. And the supporters of these tax increases often count on low voter turnout to help them kind of get their tax proposals passed, get them over the edge. And listen, I just want to be really clear. I'm actually not against all levies and bonds. I actually believe that voter-approved tax proposals are far, far superior to insider politicians just voting for another special interest lobby kind of supported tax increase, just like we witness in DC and Olympia every time that the legislature or Congress is in session. Now, one reason I support voter-approved taxation is that it still requires this kind of basic effort by the local government, mostly school districts in these recent examples, to actually justify their behavior, success, and failures to the community. I mean, these bureaucrats may not be honest, and they may kind of count on special interests who profit from those same taxes, just like the Washington Education Association, for example, to kind of carry their water for the tax proposal. But if the voters decide that they're getting the short end of the stick, the local residents can reject the proposal, which was just done, as I've shown in this video, in many local examples just last week. Only some of them of which I've been able to discuss. There were actually more than I discussed. So I want to basically kind of close this video with a little secret that I learned when I was an elected school board member myself about 10 years ago in the Rochester School District. And one of the things I did is I attended the Washington State School Directors Association conference every year. It's called WASDA, just abbreviation for short. And I always went to the breakout session on levy and bond campaigns because WASDA would have various consultants and experts pitch their strategies for passing levies and bonds. Now, these consultants were actually pretty honest most of the time, and they often pointed out that levies and certainly bonds will usually fail if an organized opposition of local voters decides to oppose a tax proposal. In fact, I remember on more than one occasion, one of these consultants would brag that they could defeat any proposed levy themselves with $1,500 and a little bit of time to actually communicate to voters in the district. Now, I believe that they were telling the truth and not just bragging. I've actually seen it myself many times. Even underfunded, disorganized, but disgruntled local voters who are angry about the problems that they've found in their local school district or other local taxing authority will often defeat the proposed tax increase just because of the increased visibility that their activism will bring to the situation for basically other people who might otherwise just forget to vote or who were mystified about how their property taxes had increased so much recently. Now, political insiders know this, which is why they usually want to be pretty quiet and advance the levy. But I believe this insider attitude is also a mistake. If you, as a local politician or bureaucrat, if you're proud of the work that you've done and the community good that you're providing to the voters in your community, you should be able to actually explain why the proposed tax is a good deal for the community. If a bureaucracy can't honestly make that case, then I believe that they deserve to lose that vote. And the voters deserve to express their dissatisfaction with the bureaucrats and their tax schemes. I'll close this video with kind of another tax proposal that was aborted before it even could get to the ballot. And this is a story from Jefferson County out on the peninsula, best known for Port Townsend among many other beautiful locations. A few months ago, I was actually out there meeting with local citizens who were upset with a planned tax proposal to build a massive swimming pool complex. And this was a real Taj Mahal of swimming pools, extravagant and expensive. And the sneaky way it was actually being planned in the shadows irritated the local residents so much that they were starting to expose the bloated waste, insider dealing, and other scandals behind the proposed plans. For those who kind of remember the Camas Pool tax project from a few years ago, this proposal in Jefferson County was actually very similar. But back to Jefferson County, this effort by local activists and voters to expose the truth about the proposal before it even got to the ballot helped just abort the foolish tax idea before it even got that far. So that tax scheme died in the shadows for now. Now, obviously, we can never rest on our laurels of either tax schemes aborted before they arrive or even those defeated at the ballot box. Special interests are always busy and looking for more ways to extract cash, your cash. And when they're defeated, they often kind of disappear for a few years, certainly like a zombie or a vampire, to kind of come back for more. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and this also applies to voter supervision of tax schemes. Some of these proposals might make sense, and they might be good and reasonable and cost-effective ideas, and I like the idea of the community buying in to support the idea if it's a good one. But other tax schemes, they're basically, and this is a growing number, unfortunately, of these proposals, they deserve to die, and voters should vote no and let you keep more of your money in your pocket rather than squandering it on just another failed insider kickback scheme. However, regardless of the outcome, the only way you can make a difference or have an impact at all is if you bother to show up. And you have to make that difference because, as I always say, the future belongs only to those who show up.